What's up? It's Cherith, the Starry-Eyed Tarot Reader. I wanted to do this video response to Tom Benjamin on Decks for Pride because it is Pride Month. It's the end of Pride Month. I recorded this earlier in the month, but I didn't like how it turned out, and I haven't honestly had a chance to get back to re-record it until now because life and other things have interfered with that. But that's the weekend now, and I have a little bit more energy, so I'm recording this video response. It's about Decks for Pride. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 decks. More than I expected. Figaro is on my lap as usual. But yeah, I got my little secret, or like low-key trans flag earrings in. I got my trans flag and other flags. I got my Pride sports bra on. The world sucks, but happy fucking Pride anyway. So I'm going to flip the camera over now and let you get a look at the decks that I chose for Pride. Alright, so like I said, this is a video response to Tom Benjamin. He made a video at the beginning of the month about decks that can be used, you know, for Pride or for really any time, but decks that have like a queer or LGBTQIA plus sort of feeling to them, or that are specifically made for that. So I wanted to talk about the decks that I have in my collection that fill that area. So let's get started. All right, so the first deck I want to talk about is the Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani. I've been working with this deck this month, but I've had this deck for a little while and I absolutely love it. It is inspired by deities, folklore, and fairy tales from around the world. Some people might say this deck isn't explicitly queer. The creator has stated on Twitter that it is. Yoshi Yoshitani intended it to be a queer deck. It is a very queer deck. It plays around with, you know, gender and sexuality. I think it has one of my favorite Two of Cups cards of all time, Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Like, how is that not queer? Absolutely love it. So, Three of Cups. This would be the first deck I have in my collection that I would say is an explicitly queer deck. It has LGBT themes from all over, and just the way Yoshi Yoshitani put it together and the themes in it are just absolutely beautiful. So that's the first deck I would say is a queer deck for Pride. The next one is the Star Spinner Tarot by Trungles. Tom Benjamin also had this one in his video. Tom said he didn't think it was an explicitly queer deck, and I'm not sure it was created with that in mind, but it definitely feels very queer. And it's not just the fact that there are, you know, the 4 lovers cards with different representations in them, which I think is absolutely beautiful. The guidebook says to take one out and just, or to take like 3 of them out and just use one. I very frequently leave all 4 of them in, which has led to some pretty interesting readings. I did once pull 2 of them in a 3-card draw, and I was like, oh, that's all right. I expect one day I'll pull all 4 and be like, oh, that's great. Talk louder. No, don't talk louder deck. This is another deck I've been working with this month for the specific purpose that for a long time I had trouble connecting with this deck. And I'll talk more about this in my end of the month wrap up that I'm going to start doing when I talk about the decks I've been working with for the month and then the decks I'm going to be working with for the next month. I think that's a good way to keep myself accountable to this project I've set for myself. So I'll talk about that a little bit more, but one of the things, other than like the Lover's card, this deck does play around with the ideas of gender and gender expression, this card being a great example. So you see this card, and it, to me, reads as very traditionally feminine. But if you read in the guidebook, it uses masculine pronouns for this character. And I just think that is absolutely brilliant. It's a way to subvert expectations and to really make you, you know, think before you jump to conclusions and something like that. And it's just an absolutely sweet little deck. I love the fairy tale themes. I love everything about it. It's beautiful. So that is the Star Spinner Tarot. My next deck really shouldn't be a surprise. I already talked about this deck in one other video. It's the Lubanko Tarot by Lubanko. I mean, it literally says that it's exploring the surreal, the intense, the queer, and the divine. And boy, is that accurate. This deck is my all-time favorite deck. It is so queer. It is so intense. It is just a joy to work with, in my opinion. And yeah, it definitely is a queer deck. There's really no other way to describe it, but I think it's still, I mean, it's still a beautiful deck. You can use it for things outside of that, but it definitely, I'm at a loss for words to describe how much I love this deck and how for me it's just it's been a revelation to work with in my own queer journey, to have this accompany my own journey has been just absolutely beautiful. And that's why it's one of my picks for decks for Pride. I champion that deck so much. The next deck is probably a complete opposite of that of the Lubanko Tarot. It's the Forest Enby Tarot. I worked with this deck last month, and I actually didn't talk about that. I'll talk about it at the end of this month's wrap up. This deck is so sweet. It's so cute. It's all animal themed. It's the Forest Enby Tarot, so it's I mean, it's non-binary. It's genderless. It changes the court cards, the names of the court cards. So you have the Sage and the Monarch. It changes the names of, so you've got the Seer, the Creator, the Protector. The Lover's card is this beautiful card here. I don't know if I was in frame right there. Sorry, I was looking at the cards and not the camera. Yeah, this is definitely a deck for Pride. It's such a beautiful little deck. I absolutely love it. And as a non-binary person myself, to have a deck like this in my collection is priceless, in my opinion. The next deck I want to talk about is one that definitely isn't explicitly queer. It's the Botanica Tarot. And I struggle to explain why I feel like this deck is a queer deck. Because it's all plants. That's all it is. It's just plants. But there's something about it... Sorry, hair. There's something about it that to me feels... I don't know, like it speaks to the queer experience. And it is such a beautiful deck. It's one of my most beautiful decks. I love working with this deck. Yeah, there's just something about it to me that feels very queer. So that's why I put this in my Pride decks. The next deck is in a similar vein to the Botanica Tarot. I don't think it's explicitly queer. It's the Dark Days Tarot. This is another deck to me that feels very queer. I feel like it speaks to the queer experience. It's all female figures or female presenting figures. I wouldn't say that it's all female figures because there's definitely figures in here that also have more of a masculine feel. There's figures in here that have more of a genderless feel or non-binary feel. To me, this deck just, it's one of those decks that it feels like a very queer deck. It feels like it speaks to the queer experience very well. And I love this deck. This is another one I've been working with this month. Feels appropriate. All right. The next deck I want to talk about is another deck that I champion and I love. I put this in the same category as Lubanko Tarot. It's the Outsider Tarot. It's tarot for misfits, freaks, rebels, queers, witches, nerds, scientists, artists, hackers, exiles, fools, resistors, provocateurs, aka outsiders. By Bobby Abate. This deck is amazing. I've been working with this deck this month too. And I didn't do this on purpose because I actually forgot it was Pride Month because I'm a terrible gay. But I forgot it's Pride Month. I just picked this deck because I wanted to work with the full-size one. I have the special edition mini from the Kickstarter, and I made a video about that. I don't know which video will go up first, probably this one. But I made a video about that, and I haven't had a chance to work with the full-size one, and I wanted that experience, so I chose it for this month. And it really does feel appropriate to work with for Pride Month because it's the Outsider. It's the Outsider Tarot. It's a very queer deck. It's got a couple special cards that he put in there. It's another one of those intense, slightly surreal decks. I have so enjoyed working with this deck. I believe I talk about this in my deck collection video on this deck, but I did not intend to get this deck. This is not my style of artwork at all. But in reading about this deck and in looking at the cards and kind of getting the story behind the deck, I knew it had to be part of my collection. The other thing I will say is I recommend, if it's still available, to get the guidebook. It's a meaty, chunky guidebook, but it talks about, the people in the cards, and it has little stories or little quotes from them, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And it has been an experience working with this deck this month. I cannot recommend it highly enough, especially if you're looking for a queer themed deck or LGBTQIA plus deck. The Outsider Tarot fits that bill. This next one is one that, while not explicitly queer, definitely is another one of those that feels queer. It's another one of those that feels like it subverts gender expectation. It plays around with gender expression and sexuality, and it's just a beautiful deck. It's the Sasuraibito, sorry if I didn't say it. It's the Sasuraibito Tarot by Stacia Burrington. It's an absolutely beautiful deck. It's one of my earliest decks. I've had it for a while. But yeah, it's one of those that I don't know if it was specifically intended to be queer, but it feels very queer. Sorry, for some reason I have trouble saying the word feels. I don't know what the heck. The last decks I want to talk about there's 4 of them. They're all by the same creator. They're all very shiny. Oh. It's the Lost Hollow Tarot, the Sinking Wasteland Tarot, the Neon Moon Tarot, and the Wayward Dark Tarot. These are all by Pixel Occult. I'm just going to flip through them one at a time. We'll start with the Sinking Wasteland Tarot. I feel... Oop, that's upside down. I feel like Pixel Occult, their decks, they do such a good job of playing around with gender, sexuality, expression of sexuality, with diversity. You know, there's different body types, there's disability representation. And so for me, their decks have a tendency to feel very queer because of that sort of thing. Yeah, so that was the Sinking Wasteland Tarot. Next one I'll show is the Lost Hollow Tarot. This is their most recent tarot deck. It's a matte or linen, I think, cardstock, so it's not quite as shiny. But I absolutely love every Lover's card in their deck. They do such a great job of representation with it. I mean, it's just so beautiful. But yeah, and just the way that they put their decks together, again, they just feel very queer. And I love working with them. I love working with their decks. Obviously, I've got 4 of them. Better hope I love working with them. I have enough. The next one is the Wayward Dark Tarot. This is their Thoth-based tarot. So it doesn't follow the traditional Rider-Waite. It's got different titles for some of the cards. I love that star card. But even without like a lot of people in the deck, it feels a very queer deck. I don't know how to explain it other than that. Just for me, like, this is a queer deck. It's an LGBTQIA deck. It's a deck for pride. And the last one is the Neon Moon Tarot. I already have my deck collection video about this one up if you want to check out my inane ramblings about this deck and how much I love it. Lover's card again. I'm just going to show the lover card from all of them. I don't think I did on Sinking Wasteland. Oops, that's okay. This was the first deck of theirs I got. And I just absolutely love it. There's nothing I don't like about this deck. Woo. Dropping cards. Ah! Rainbow heart. This feels like such a short video. I feel like it should be so much longer. I feel like I don't have enough decks. I really do, though. I feel like I should probably expand my queer themed decks. But at the same time, there was another creator whose video I watched, and I think they made the point of, you know, any deck can be used for like a LGBTQIA queerant. And that's true. I think to an extent, all decks can be queer decks. There are certain decks, though, that, like the Lubanko Tarot and the Outsider Tarot, they're specifically created with that in mind. And I think, especially for a queer person, that really means something to be able to have decks where you can see yourself in the deck. I think it's important, especially with how shit our world is right now. I think it's important to have, you know, a little something to give you a bit of sanity. So those are my decks for pride. Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Bye till next time.